Thanks everybody for joining A Walk in the Park. This is our first episode of this series. We're going to be doing it pretty frequently, at least on a monthly basis, getting together with intelligent people in this ecosystem that we take part in, and trying to bring knowledge to you that hopefully helps you get more value out of your day and think differently about your business. We here today are focusing on RUPES, and we have Nate Schomer joining us. Thanks for joining, Nate. Really, we're going to talk about how Nate and the team at RUPES were able to lead a transformation with the help of Bryant Consulting in implementing NetSuite ERP for their business, and what that project was like, what that transformation was like, and learn a lot in the process, I'm sure. Few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's event is being recorded, so everybody's line's muted. If at any point in time you have any questions, you're welcome to put them into the Q&A. We do have a Q&A session planned at the end of the day here, so any questions you have, we'll try to answer. And we may address them during the presentation as well if you have any, so feel free to submit them. We'd be happy to reply. The other thing to note is, we also have the opportunity to see if you raise your hand as well, and I could potentially allow you to talk, but definitely encouraging the Q&A, because that could be really challenging to accommodate all of the attendees during the course of the meeting. A couple of notes about our sponsors, the people who are here representing. So we obviously are going to have some discussions around NetSuite. NetSuite's an application that for the last 20 years has been helping organizations grow, scale, and adapt to change. They provide a suite of cloud-based applications that includes financials, we call ERP or enterprise resource planning, as well as professional services, automation, CRM functionality or client relationship management, commerce, and more. And it's used by about 31,000 companies across over 200 countries. Bryant Consulting, the organization that I represent, and Ray as well, is a alliance partner of NetSuite. We're a technology consulting firm focused on strategy, technology, and business transformation, and we work with clients like RUPES here today, to help them through their most challenging technology projects. RUPES, is a manufacturer and distributor of hand and edge polishing and sanding tools. And they're helping our world shine one surface at a time. Nate here is their controller, and he's been gracious enough to join us today, and we're excited to learn from him and his journey. But in addition to Nate, we also have Ray McKenzie-Young. Ray is a practice lead with our team over our distribution manufacturing vertical and services area, and he's got a wealth of experience. Ray, if you don't mind, would you do a brief introduction to yourself, and then we'll hand the mic over to Nate, and we'll get into the discussion.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Alec. My name's Ray McKenzie. Live in Denver, Colorado. I've been in IT consulting since 2005. I used to put in PeopleSoft financials and supply chain solutions back when ERP was in your basement on an app server. So long-term inventory nerd, if you want to call it that. But had the benefit of getting to meet Nathan and Rob at RUPES. And we get excited when we go and walk around a client's warehouse, and especially excited when they also still make things. So if you like CNC lathes, Nate's got one in the back of his warehouse, and it's exciting because you get to see as a consultant, right, the physical processes that you're then going to help their team ultimately implement a solution for in NetSuite. And so it's nice when you can take that physical walk through the plant, warehouse, and the manufacturing floor. But I've been doing NetSuite specifically since 2013, heavily focused in wholesale distribution and manufacturing. Yeah, that's a little bit about me, and we'll hand it over to Nate.
Yeah, Nate, if you don't mind, a little bit about your background and any additional overview about RUPES, what y'all do, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Alec. So my name's Nate Schomer. Live in Golden, Colorado, just outside of Denver. I've been in the manufacturing industry for roughly 20 or 17 years now, specifically with smaller manufacturing companies, and work more on the accounting side of things. I started with RUPES in the summer of 2019, so Been here about 4 years now. A little bit more about RUPES. RUPES is a family-owned company, started in 1947 in Milan, Italy. They're kind of known for their starting and innovation of their electric tools, hand tools specifically. RUPES USA started back in 2015 when RUPES bought another company that was similar to RUPES SPA as far as the polishing tool industry, which then kind of leads us today as we are more of the innovator of the sanding and polishing segment. We are the only company that has that includes all the tools, the pads, as well as the polishing compound. So all three of those are engineered as a system and are all sold by RUPES USA. As a system, we are headquarters here in Louisville, Colorado. We have a purpose-built building that we can do trainings for our distributors. We have a B2B business model, so we sell to our distributors. And then, so we can bring them here to do our training, show them how to use our product, that kind of stuff too. So second generation owners still in the family business. We have about 42 employees in North America. 32 of them are here in Louisville. So we're a pretty small company, which is pretty nice, but we do all wear multiple hats, obviously, too. So, but it's a good challenge to have, and it's a good company to work for. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Nate. Great overview. I guess to talk a little bit about this journey that you've been through over the last, I don't know, 6 months to a year or more.
Yeah.
At some point in your journey, you came to looking for new systems, new capabilities, and that led you to us. But maybe taking a couple of steps even back further than that, what systems were you using before you started feeling that pain? What was the pain? What prompted you to start looking for new applications or new capabilities that led you to kind of say something needs to change here?
Yeah, totally. So with the purchase of Cyclo, they were on the QuickBooks system. They were using QuickBooks only as far as inventory is concerned. There's a lot of manufacturing as far as bombs as well, work orders, that kind of thing. So, and it was all order to cash process. So the full system, full caveat on that. So, so when I started, they actually had Fishbowl as an integrated part of that kind of that was used to control inventories, shipping and all that sort of thing too. Mm-hmm. The biggest factor of why we needed to move to something a little bit more robust was year over year, we were increasing sales significantly. And so there's a lot of transactions going on. We had an on-premise server that we were using for QuickBooks and Fishbowl. There was always a data connection there, which sometimes we were having issues. I mean, once those data files get so large, you're prone to having problems. So it was just time. Late last year, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and our CEO Rob Walker too. It wasn't just me, thankfully. So we just decided that we needed to look at a new ERP system, and we did do our due diligence. We did look at SAP and a couple other ones too. Went through some of those demonstrations and that sort of thing, and just kind of liked what NetSuite had to offer as far as the cloud-based system. We knew we wanted to do that instead of having an on-premise situation. And then also, we actually had Salesforce for our CRM initially, but we decided to move with the CRM that's within NetSuite to handle our customers' database. So, it was pretty much down to NetSuite and SAP, but we went with NetSuite ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, it sounds like, I mean, moving from an environment where we have, QuickBooks, Fishbowl, Salesforce, different applications. Some are tended to talk to each other, some may have not been.
Yeah,
um, trying to kind of keep the organization in sync as you're growing revenue and operations, et cetera, is challenging or increasingly challenging. And we hear that from a lot of our customers that we interact with. They see themselves continuing that growth and understanding that the only way to continue it or to sustain it would be to hire more people to sustain current processes that may be broken or challenging and not super sustainable long term, right? And so
Yep.
you then embarked on a transformation project here. I think one of the things that you emphasized to me, and I think that even Ray emphasized earlier at the beginning of this call, was kind of one of the real values that you felt our team brought to the table in working with you in that transformation was some in-person interaction throughout the project. In particular at the kind of tail end, later stages when, push came to shove, we needed to really, go live and work through, anything necessary to make sure everybody felt comfortable operating in that time frame. Maybe you can speak to that experience. Going into a cutover can be pretty daunting for all these other folks that are part of your organization. Like, what recommendations you have people on the line here who maybe haven't, are just starting this journey, right? They haven't told everybody yet that they're going to have a new a new system tomorrow, right? Or in 6 months or whatever. I don't know. What are your thoughts about kind of engaging with a team like ours and working, internally to lead a change for the organization, get everybody on board in the lead up to a cutover?
Yeah, it can be daunting. I mean, it's, especially when you're kind of a small company, it's like, okay, well, there's only a couple of us that can really do that implementation as well too. So, we started the whole process early last year, just looking at different ERP systems. And then once we made that decision to go with NetSuite, it was all head full pretty much. So, we early on, we realized how much we needed an in-house implementation help, which we called on Bryant Park to kind of at the last minute. We were going for an October 1st start date, which as we were going along, June, July, August, like, okay, well, we need to move forward, get this going a lot faster, because there's a lot to go through, obviously too. So so we started with you guys mid-August, and I mean, it was between me and Rob and every single day. I mean, with Ray and Emil, we just pounded it out every single day, just go over every little aspect of NetSuite, get part numbers in, get customers in, understand what some of those systems do all through NetSuite, and get the basic stuff at least started. And then after that, it was really just trying to train everybody up on how to put in ordering and payment, getting payments set up and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of daunting at first, but Bryant Park really helped us get through all that within reasonable time. So
Ray, from your point of view, going into their environment, like, what were the big lift items or kind of most challenging pieces to work through, where you felt they needed the most help, or where there was the most risk to that time frame?
Sure. One of the big challenges, and it's not just RUPES's experiences, but it's common effort, right, is the item master. So when you're making the product, right, from a raw aluminum block, and you're manufacturing the casing, and you're building the motor, you're buying sub-assemblies, right, and they actually do, RUPES puts together the tool itself. They also do refurbishment, right, so they've got a warranty. But if you think about what goes into a polishing tool, right, there's common components, right, so the levels of depth inside of the bill of materials is fairly complex for RUPES, given what you're making and the ability to sort of remanufacture and recondition. If Alec's working at a body shop and he's got his favorite Bigfoot polishing tool and he's got it, really broken in the way he likes, and then that RPM starts slowing down, like you don't just have to go buy a new tool, right? You ship it back to Nate and the crew at RUPES, and they're gonna, put new brushes in, right? So the fact that it's, a serviceable product, it's a long lifetime, does have some complexity in terms of how do you make the distinction between that's actually Alec's tool that I have in my physical possession, my shop, and I'm going to put some new parts into it, and maybe that's covered under the warranty, or maybe I'm going to sell that service, right? So we did have to, as a team, devise a naming structure and sort of part structure to make that delineation between I've got control of a customer's part, their tool or tools, and it's basically now raw subassembly that needs to go into a repair line, which is distinct from, hey, we're making it to stock, we're making it to order. And so, and again, coming off of the legacy environment, that focus of here's what we're making and we know it and it's in our head, and maybe it's in a system, but it's at that top level finished good. It's trying to build each discrete step in the manufacturing flow so that hey, here's what's going into it part wise and what can move around a little bit, because sometimes you need an extra brush or whatever, right? And so I'd say that was one thing that I recollect, looking back is, and for context, Rob's not on the phone, but Rob, the CEO, has an engineering background, so he wants to know how the machine works. That's how his brain works. And so Nate mentioned that a bit, but our team, myself and Emil, were really able to help meet that expectation that Rob and Nate had. Like, cool, I hear you saying the answer, but I want to know why and how, right? And I think that's a general theme that can be useful to keep in mind, right? Is, it's not just give me the answer blindly, but actually provide the context and relate it back to how I run a business. I think that's a key value that Bryant Park can offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the big challenge, definitely item master. And when you have a diverse item master, right, for an organization that isn't just buying and selling a widget, right? There's certainly layers of complexity, even for a distributor, there's still a whole bunch of complexity. But item master, certainly from my point of view, for a company that's a product-based organization, usually one of the biggest lifts or challenges in a deployment, getting it together. There's all these different people who actually have a stake in what an item master looks like, right? Sales has an influence in pricing, purchasing has an influence in attributes around lead time and safety stock levels. And we have, merchandising and accounting, and, everybody has their stake in the pie, right? When it comes to the item master data and the sources, when you come into these environments, we got some in Fishbowl, some in QuickBooks, some in Salesforce, some in spreadsheets, inevitably. Getting all of that information together in a timely fashion to get it all into the ERP, so we have time to test and validate. And then the other challenging part, right, is, how do I, once I do that first load, between the time I first load it into the ERP and the time I go live, I'm going to need to do it again. I'm going to need to refresh it, because in production, people are still changing prices, changing items, adding items, changing customer data, et cetera. So this wrangling of data, specifically the item master, is definitely the biggest challenge, I'd say, in a deployment for any distributor or manufacturer, in our experience. Something we try to get ahead of at the very beginning. If you have an opportunity to get started cleaning that stuff up early, then it's usually to your benefit. Nate, anything to add there? Or?
Yeah, and it goes with, because we use bombs and there's sub bombs and sub assemblies, like Ray was saying too. So it goes pretty in depth quite a bit. So it's just it's a good point. It's a good job. It's a good move to clean your data early. And I agree with that too. And sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah. So I think in your project, the team from our side, Ray, it was you and Emil, really. I mean, it was just the two of you guys predominantly. Yep. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really what the project team was. I think, Ray, you were really playing the role of project manager and engagement manager, kind of architect, and Emil really a lead consultant. And I think it was really the two of you guys knocking it out. And you're two both Colorado based. They're Colorado based. It was a really good fit. obviously for, in-person presence at a relatively low expense and time expense to everybody involved. So that was nice. And then Nate, you mentioned the timeline. You said you started in like July and then go live was October. Is that right?
That's correct. So we actually signed the NetSuite, signed with NetSuite in March, I believe it was, and then we started down the route with them, and then we decided that we wanted to have it in-house implementation. So that's when we started with Bryant Park, and actually got a referral from one of the suite apps that is available with RF Smart that does inventory transactions and stuff like that with NetSuite. So that's how we found out about Bryant Park. So
yeah,
it was
What
September 1st, right? And
yeah,
Emil and I came and we met with you guys for I think a couple days, went back and forth, and basically drank from the fire hose, tried to get
30-day sprint.
a quick understanding of how you run the business and where your pain points were, and really tailor our plan to get you live, in
Short order.
October.
yeah.
So couple of questions. I mean, Nate, you're in the accounting one. We got a costing method. Were you guys using a standard costing, average cost method? What was deployed there? I don't
So
remember.
beforehand, we were using with QuickBooks, we were using average cost, and then we decided to stick with average cost, just because it's our costs fluctuate kind of significantly, just the way that who we purchase from. A lot of our stuff comes from Europe, and so there is a factor as far as a euro amount as well. So we stuck with the average cost. Some of the like labor absorption that we use, we stuck with standard cost with that. So so it does vary. It does variable. There is a variable with inventory and stuff like that. But
meaning in your routings, you guys had like a labor standard,
yeah,
and you were leveraging that still. Okay.
exactly. In our bombs, and we have labor absorption that we use with the standardized costs in pretty much all of our aspects of our manufacturing processes. So yeah.
And let's that maybe Ray, because it did seem like you hit a nerve with some of the audience when it came to the return and repair process. I know it's sometimes it could be really interesting. I mean, organizations really struggle with some of the return to credit processes when we come across them, and maybe they're using, again, QuickBooks and Fishbowl, and really a lot of times we're seeing a lot of stuff happening offline or on a piece of paper or scratch pad somewhere. Maybe what is that what does that process look like, at least in the future state, as deployed in RUPES? Maybe for somebody on the audience who's like, I got a warranty process. what kind of end state can I hope for? I don't know. Maybe Nate, if you want to, I don't know if you want to try and take a stab at that, and then maybe Ray, you want to add any color?
Sure.
Yeah. So we do have an in-house repair, so they handle all the warranty repairs on our tools specifically. We also have a flat rate program. So if someone, and this we're talking about more of the end user, if they have a tool that just is over our 1-year warranty, they can send it in, send us $110, and we'll fix it for them, send it back out in a couple of weeks. So the way we kind of formatted that with NetSuite is we created an RMA for that. We get the tool back in under a specific part number, then that part number is converted to a work order where the line puts the parts, puts some labor into it, and then fixes the tool, and then we send it back out to the end user. So it's a real simple process, quick process that we just use an RMA for that.
Yeah.
So
Ray, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the distinction, right, is from an inventory control perspective, right? They all kind of look the same. Well, one's maybe got a little use on it, but on the warehouse floor, right, you have to be able to represent, those brand new tools, and this tool that is the same tool but has been used, right, is a distinct part number, right? And so when you're receiving it in, right, you have to put, you know, the new motor in or the new brushes or whatever, you know, the sort of the rebuild effort is. And so that ability to sort of have quantity on hand visibility in NetSuite to really what's the customer's owned tools, right, really helps the process, the physical process, as well as, you know, from Nate's perspective, the book, right? Because we weren't ever putting you know, the customer's tool on the balance sheet of RUPES, right? The financial title stays, obviously it's your tool, right? But you have physical control of it. And so you still want to not lose it in somewhere in the warehouse. And so we were able to do that by, you know, receiving it in at basically $0 cost. And then you're still, you know, consuming the raw goods that are part of that service. And really the branching logic was, is it within the warranty period or not? And to the question from you, John, you know, NetSuite does have a warranty and repair management module. Sometimes that's a really good fit. It kind of depends on the use case. Oftentimes, right, if there's a judgment call on it's a year, but you're one of our best customers and we're going to go ahead and fix your tool, right? So my recollection was that was part of the rationale for, we really used, or the RUPES team uses that approval of the RA to disposition and say, okay, yeah, we're going to prorate it somewhat, right? Because it was, you know, a year in 10 days or whatever. And so that balance of what's right for the customer service aspect or of, you know, brand loyalty and really just standing behind your product versus saying, okay, it's, you know, a hard cut off at a year, right? So that was part of the rationale for why we designed that particular process. It gives the team flexibility to make a judgment call.
Yeah, very common, right? Very common. And some people might even precede it with NetSuite as some case management, like customer support service representative management functionality. Hey, we take a case turns to an RA, we receive the inventory back into stock against. We may issue them a credit, kind of cleans up the accounting string of transactions, may even be associated with another sales order, ultimately reship back a replacement good or so on and so forth. And there's somebody's asking in the audience, David, Carol, glad to see you on the line, by the way. The return to vendor, I think in your case, RUPES, you are the manufacturer. So you're not, you kind of, I don't believe that you guys are you handling any warranties with your manufacturers at all? I don't believe you do.
No, not for we don't really have that problem. I mean, obviously we have some returns that we would need to handle, but we don't use that within NetSuite.
Yeah, but some of our customers do this. There's an equivalency there, David. I'm happy to chat with you that on another one. But yeah, I don't think RUPES does because they're kind of they have the benefit of being the one doing it, so they don't have to manage that complexity. So there's pros and cons to both sides, being a distributor and being a manufacturer, right?
Totally.
So what what are some of the other areas maybe where you saw some big benefits, like big wins, very low, like kind of very apparent to the rest of the organization, kind of came out of the deployment project you went through from your point of view?
I would say still the implementation. I mean, we just had to put foot to the floor, gas pedal, and get things done. And we knew what the outcome was going to be. It was going to be better for us as a process, as for employees, as being able to see our data live as well, with NetSuite, make it more efficient for everybody as well. That was kind of our biggest thing, is that we didn't have real-time data that we could see with QuickBooks and Fishbowl in particular, just because of their data syncing ability. But on a whole, we can. A lot of it is taking a lot of the information that NetSuite has and then being able to export that as well into Excel, and then we can manipulate that furthermore if we needed to. That's a big thing. There's the save searches, there's the reports that kind of come native with NetSuite that you can manipulate to however and whatever information that you need as well. So I think that was another big thing that we were looking for in the next ERP system, was just being able to manipulate data and really run our business the way that we wanted to run it. So.
Yeah. So, you know, you mentioned also you made the decision to move away from Salesforce and into NetSuite for your CRM, and customer, kind of customer management, customer information management. What's your sales team look like? Like what's their feedback been so far from your point of view? And obviously salespeople in CRM is always tough, right?
Yeah,
It's a tough audience right there.
yeah, and our sales team is a little different. We kind of established our distributors, and they kind of have their separate thing to do, and and we're still trying to get them to understand data and read data and run those reports out of NetSuite. So it's still kind of in that beginning stage. Salesforce, we tried to get Salesforce going with Fishbowl, but it wouldn't sync 100% all the time, and we had a lot of problems with that. So we didn't really get to train those sales guys on the different reports and being able to show their distributors saying, hey, look, this is what I'm showing for you sales wise in these specific categories.
Yeah.
So we're still kind of in the beginning processes with them, and something that we need to continue working with them to what they can use NetSuite to the full extent. So
yeah, we see it shake out both ways. Like some organizations have this big investment in another CRM platform, Salesforce a common one, but there's a ton others out there. And NetSuite's, integration friendly, pretty easy to, connect up to these CRM applications, make communication and give visibility to, the sales organization and, to accounting and other organization team members who maybe aren't in the CRM day in and day out. But it's tough to replace or create the type of the breadth of visibility that they might have within, when they're actually in the same accounting system and operating system. We can restrict them so they can't see, the stuff we don't want them to see. We can lock them down to just their accounts and their customers and their transactions, but, they don't need to worry about whether or not they have an accurate, has it shipped yet, right?
Yeah.
That's it's accurate. It's right there. The customer is asking them, they can answer the question definitively, right? Has it shipped yet? Hasn't shipped? When do we think it's going to ship? Those are really easy, really easy questions to answer now, where previously there's been a lot of, email swapping and phone tagging. Likely.
Exactly.
Nate, one of my recollections was really, from your desk, right, reconciling, the operational sort of count on hand in Fishbowl compared to your book value in QuickBooks. As you mentioned, right, that the company file size was large and you were having just sort of data integrity issues. But how would you compare that and contrast it to sort of the legacy system was a bunch of divergent systems. You're basically all in NetSuite right now, right? How have you seen that in terms of like an efficiency gain on just being the controller? Like, hey, I can reconcile in one system, and so if you could like speak to us for that trust of the data, because that's sometimes a big theme, right? Is right, put it in one spot, but like, how do you know from the financial control perspective, like it's right? Like, how do you maybe speak about like your cycle counting and your testing of your inventory levels against book?
Yeah, of course. So obviously, like the goal of that is to kind of set it and forget it, being able to say, okay, the system's doing its thing. There's a couple things that maybe I need to check and we do a monthly close on all of our financials. And so obviously there's things that I do every month just to verify that accounts are being hit right and that sort of thing. But it really goes to making sure those items are set up correctly and that includes new items going into the system and hitting those accounts the way that you need them to as well. And within NetSuite, obviously the safe searches is key with that, being able to look at those searches on a monthly basis and say, okay, what did we do this month, and what changes have we had, especially with having a subsidiary that's underneath us for our Houston location. I mean, it took me a while to figure out how to make a consolidated statement and to make those books correct, to make it look right, and just The journal entries are big key and figuring all that out, but save searches, looking at that data, making sure that your month close is actually what physically you should be showing. But in essence, I mean, it was the data problems are pretty much negated now, just because it's all in one.
Right. Has that led to meaningful reduction in time, the amount of time it takes you to close the books from your point of view? Or?
Significantly. Like I said, we have RF Smart that handles our inventory, so our pick, pack, and ship, as well as we do cycle counts through that, which all feeds to NetSuite. And I can look at all that data as it's going in. So, you know, we have a planned cycle counts on Wednesdays with the team down there, and so I can go back in there and look specifically on those things that are happening. So it's a lot better visibility, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
There is a variance, right? You know about it in a timely manner,
Yeah.
compared to waiting till you're reconciling, at month end and wondering, man, why do we have this, variance on an account, right? That's what any distributor, right, or manufacturer and distributor in your case, right, that's consuming parts and selling parts, like it's a key point, right? Like the sync between the book count and the physical count, right, and having the tool set and the process to reinforce that, it's, I have a biased view, but that's one of the big goals, right, of an inventory management system or ERP is the
perpetual
book
inventory
accurate to what's on the shelf? Yes, right, and having that efficiency of those cycle counts that take the time to prove yes. In fact, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but would you venture a guess on your inventory variance before and after having NetSuite and RF Smart combined? Like, what's your rough running on variance?
Well, we thankfully we're pretty low as it is, and so we do an inventory count at the end of every year. Last year it was very, very low, like less than 1% variance.
It's a fraction of a percent, right?
So out of $5-6 million of inventory, I mean, that's pretty dang good. So
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's all about the visibility and trying to figure out how can you just keep an eye on this stuff rather than and really just trusting that you have the right data is the big thing, and NetSuite does that.
Yeah. So what you've been on the system for a while, but you got some things that are up and coming, things you're doing to change the business, adapt, grow. Can you maybe speak to some of the things that are up ahead for you or currently ongoing, maybe ways that those are potentially a little easier to tackle, and some of this changes easier to tackle when you have a little bit more capabilities. Maybe you can touch on some of that, Nate.
Yeah, of course. So obviously one of the big things is there's a ton of suite apps that connect into NetSuite that can help you be more efficient. Within any of your processes, really, either packing or shipping or manufacturing, reports, all that kind of stuff too. I mean, the opportunities are pretty much endless, and there's obviously more stuff that comes every month. So
yeah,
I mean, it's all data based, right? I mean, NetSuite is pretty much just the holder of all that data. And so how you dump that data in is really open to anything. Right now I'm working on a project where we can send in an PO from one of our distributors in, and it can be formatted in any way. It can go in, read that data, read off of a PDF, and then put it directly into NetSuite. And then we can have a process where our customer service team goes and just checks that order and then just clicks it off and away it goes. So that's one of the things. And then customer portal is a big thing. Everything is trying to make everything as efficient as possible, right? I mean, use the software to your advantage.
Yeah.
And creating a portal where customers can kind of be a little bit more self-sufficient is another thing that's going to be our next thing that we'll work on for the rest of the year. So,
Yeah.
so just a couple of things, but
We'll have to get you connected to John Haygood, our commerce practice lead. He's a really good dude, and he helps NetSuite roll out NetSuite Suite Commerce, or their my account customer portal kind of capabilities. Nice, could be branded beautifully, and a lot of customers definitely like, once we have all of the data here, like, so do I need to kind of keep having the customer call me to get it out of here? No. Turns out they can log in to a customer facing portal and interact with invoices and orders and payments and all of these things, and suddenly your phone calls are reduced dramatically because you're encouraging them to get the answers themselves, which obviously makes a big difference in efficiencies. Like, you don't want to double revenue and double the size of customer service every time you double revenue, right? That would be not ideal.
That's so true. So true.
So I guess with that, I think we're kind of to the tail end of our content that we wanted to cover here. I think we've gotten a few questions from folks in the audience as we've gone through this. Really appreciate the engagement. But we'll maybe open it up for a little bit more Q&A. I think there's like one or two more that are in here. And if anybody has any final questions, they can feel free to drop them in, and we'll just try and see what we can squeeze in here to last like 3 or 4 minutes. So one other question here was knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently, I guess, about the way that you went about this project? Maybe anything you would have done, see, put yourself in the shoes. Some of the audience members, right? We haven't even started this yet. So maybe some advice for them.
Yeah, definitely give yourself time. I mean, obviously, depending on the size of your company, I mean, we've got roughly, I think, 1,500 SKUs or something like that, roughly. But, I mean, it's start early. That way you can go and test and make sure everything's working right. All your payment stuff's going on there. I mean, there's a lot of connections that have to happen just to make order to cash happen, so, be open to getting like raise recommendations and meals recommendations too. I mean, these guys are there to help you with your implementation. They want to go smooth as well, but the other nice thing that they have is they work with so many other manufacturers and say, hey, this is what works with this company. What do you think about this? Let's try this, that kind of thing too. And I've got kind of an IT background a little bit too. I like the IT side of things, and being able to understand how NetSuite works, that's going to save you a lot of time. So, if you have an IT person that can help you with this, and then just can understand that back end of things, will significantly help.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see that too. It's interesting. It's, the bigger the organization, the more data you likely have, unless you're in a really cool industry. you're selling one product and just pushing a ton of it, right? Then your life is potentially easier. But I think, with ever increasing order value, right? But no, reality is that, volume increases as you get bigger, the number of users increase, your processes inherently have to get more complex. Everybody's getting more specialized. And that's a big driver for these types of unifying applications like we have here. And yeah, definitely would say that. We have somebody in the audience who's asking, we've got 10,000 bombs and routings, right? So certainly, compared to Nate here, Nate's sitting there going, boy, I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. But reality is there's people, every time somebody says, oh, I've got a lot of data, I can tell you from my experience, there's probably stories much greater than that. And NetSuite, can certainly support bills and materials in the tens of thousands. But I do think that, it's important when we think about this, there is at some point a threshold when it comes to data conversion and strategy around data conversion. With Nate at 1,500 items, doing a CSV or static export and then migration or import into NetSuite from a static spreadsheet and then replicating that at the time of cutover is not so heavy a volume of activity that it can't be done pretty rapidly, right? And in that environment, it's not so bad to do it that way. If we're looking at, I'm here an M2M SQL database, 10,000 plus bombs and routings, we also have pricing tables, cost tables, associated vendor tables, when we start to see volumes tilt up a little higher, we'll potentially step in and leverage more of a extract, transform, load, ETL, or automated way for migrating master data, especially item master information. And there's sort of a tipping point. I don't know where that. I'm not going to go ahead and say where that number is, but it's somewhere between 5 and 10,000 potentially, where you're going to start to want to do these things in a more automated way. Good news is we got Ben, who's not on the line here on our team, but also there's a lot of people in the ecosystem here to help you with those types of data projects, data migration projects that are much more voluminous and at scale. Certainly a team at BPC does a lot of that too. And then Nate, how many, so the other question that came in from somebody in the audience was around scheduling by work center, scheduling, some of this production operation stuff. How many, so how are you guys are scheduling, production and cert work orders in NetSuite? Is that by work center? Can you kind of talk a little bit about how you manage, who's doing what when it comes to production or manufacturing processes?
Yeah, of course. So we actually don't. We only have one BOM that let me think here. We have we don't. It's not by work center. Our work centers, our BOMs are sub BOMs. So there's one master BOM, and then each has a sub BOM into that, and then we don't have it based off of a work center. So we run 60 tools per work order, and that just goes through our line. So we don't really have a work center set up.
Got
for
it.
that.
So you're sort of sequencing work orders down a single line.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Is there any prioritization of work orders, or you just sort of first come, first serve?
No, we just have them lined up for the day, and then they just kind of go through that line. So there's not really like a syncing thing with it. It's just, okay, we're gonna do 200 tool or 160 tools today. Here's the tools that we have laid out. We have BOMs that we print out. We have the bill of materials that are printed out that are pulled by one of the employees that lines it up with our manufacturing line, and then it just gets started once the previous one gets going. So so we don't really use, I don't think, if I understand the question correctly.
Yeah, no, this sounds like kind of a
work centers.
Yeah, like if they had if you had 5 or 6 lines as an example in your environment, which isn't, again, not uncommon to see, but I totally understand that might not be relevant to you there. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, but yeah, I think other organizations may have more complex manufacturing requirements. Certainly happy to chat about those. I think we'll try and find maybe on one of these next episodes, see if we can get one of our manufacturing customers more have a broader facility on the line. We'll get them on to hear from them as well. But this has been awesome so far. I really do appreciate everybody for joining, and we'll give it one. Thanks. Yeah, WaterJet. I'm actually in. I'm getting a question from Tom on the line. Says he does WaterJet paint and assembly and metal fabrication, and I'm actually in Peoria, Chicago today to meet with a company that does the exact same thing. So I'm looking forward to.
Cool.
We'll continue that conversation, but nonetheless, really appreciate everybody who's jumped on the line here today for walking the park. Thank you so much to Nate for sharing your story with us and your time. And to the RUPES team for being a great partner to us. We really do appreciate it. And for NetSuite, obviously, for all of y'all support. Thanks for joining. And if y'all have any questions, we're here. Get in touch with us. Email, phone, LinkedIn, you name it. We're not hard to get in touch with. Thanks, everybody, for joining.
Thanks so much.
See ya.
Bye now.
Brought to you by Bryant Park Consulting, a NetSuite Alliance partner.